Ever wonder how much a brand new podcast can make? Well, stick around as we expose the real earnings, the secrets behind the success, and how you can apply these insights to your own podcast. So let's get started. Today, we're diving deep into the financial journey of the podcast that I started from scratch about 2.5 years ago. The podcast is all about different side hustles, and I would interview people that were doing successful side hustles from all different fields, such as Fiverr, a moving company, ATM machines, to even farming pigs and running a travel YouTube channel. I would then ask them all types of questions on how they got started, how much money they actually made, and how the listeners could get started for themselves. Now, let's take a deep dive into the stats. The duration really ranges broadly. It could be anywhere from about 25 minutes per an episode all the way past 1 hour. The amount of downloads per an episode really ranges as well. You can see on the low end here, it's about 768 downloads, where on the high end, we're just below 3,800. I would say on average per episode is about 1,500 to 2,000 downloads. Even though we haven't uploaded a new episode in over 17 months now, you can still see that we're still getting downloads every single month. And I have to say, it started off very slow with our episodes, and you can see an exponential increase over time. Then it flatlined over here, and that's mostly because we stopped uploading new episodes. Even though it has been over 1.5 years since we uploaded a new episode, we were still receiving downloads, which is still pretty cool to see, even though it's been steadily decreasing over time now. I thought it was pretty cool that the podcast was downloaded and listened to all throughout the world with a bunch of different countries and cities, even though I was anticipating it mostly to be in the US and Canada, so that's pretty cool to see. Some other pretty cool stats to look into is the apps and devices. You can see that the top app is by far Spotify, with Apple Podcasts coming in at 15%, and then the top device by far was the iPhone, and it seems like the mobile just blew it out of the water, which you would expect when listening to a podcast. So this is also great insights if you're looking to uploading a podcast. I would definitely start with Spotify and Apple Podcasts, but it definitely helps to have your podcast out there on other apps just to get more downloads. And in total, we have over 29,000 downloads for the podcast with just our 13 episodes. How much you get paid depends on a ton of different factors, like what is your podcast about, what industry, how many ads you place during your podcast, and how many views you receive, plus a ton of other factors. So in total, for the 13 podcast episodes, we made a grand total of $228.68. On average, that comes out to be about $13.45 per a month in revenue, and on the low end is less than $1, but we have seen months on the high end be past $31. One thing to note, I use Buzzsprout, which posts the episodes to all the different platforms for the podcast and also allows you to work with advertisers to earn revenue. And without Buzzsprout, you would have to work with a brand directly, which if you are a small podcast that receives less than 25 to 50,000 views per an episode, is pretty unlikely to happen. With Buzzsprout, you do have to accept each ad to be placed on the podcast, so placing the ads is a lot more manual and inconsistent, but hey, at least you're able to have an option to monetize your podcast. Even more shockingly, we uploaded the video versions for the podcast on YouTube and also clipped them into shorts and created a shortened version to upload on YouTube, and those videos received over $1,690. So in total, we received just under $2,000. Tell me down below in the comments if this is more or less revenue than you would originally expect for a brand new podcast. That's also with a podcast not uploading a new episode in over 14 months. The RPM, otherwise known as the revenue per 1,000 playback, is $11.66 for the podcast ads. If you compare that to this YouTube channel where you're watching the video, the average RPM for the last 28 days was $17.86. There are also other potential revenue streams that you could use to make even more money with a podcast, such as Buy Me a Coffee or other similar platforms like Patreon and Podfan. You could also use the memberships on YouTube, or you could even add sponsors and affiliate links. Unfortunately, none of these extra methods actually worked for me and didn't produce any extra income. Not all of the $1,690 is pure profit though. Luckily, I did edit the podcast myself and the videos that were re-uploaded to YouTube, so luckily we didn't have to pay any additional costs there. However, for using Buzzsprout, we did have to pay a monthly fee, which was $12 a month. So in total, we ended up paying $324 for hosting our podcast, which means our total profit was actually $1,366. Are you surprised by how much we made in podcasts with the revenue and profit with only 13 episodes? And do you think I should continue doing the podcast? I would love to read your comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, then make sure to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe. YouTube thinks you're going to enjoy this video next, so feel free to check it out. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.